All right, welcome everyone. This is the Storage SIG meeting. Today is June 22, 2017. As a reminder, this meeting is public and recorded. I'm going to take a look at the agenda. The biggest thing we have on the agenda is Q3 v1.8 planning. We are just wrapping up 1.7, and there are a couple of bugs that still need to be closed on the storage side of things. One is related to flex volumes. I believe the PR for that is done. It's just awaiting merge. There's another couple of issues that came in earlier this week around the new capacity isolation feature. And I believe Cheng is working on that from our side. Cheng, do you have an update on that?
If Cheng isn't here, I can update for him.
That'd be great.
Yeah, basically he sent out one PR to put the reported capacity to hide it unless you specify the alpha feature gate. So that PR has been merged, but then it ended up breaking the test for it because I think he missed some places where it needed to be changed. The resource name needed to be changed. So he just sent out another PR to fix that, I think last night. So we're reviewing it now.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle.
Sorry, you were asking the question, I just joined. Yeah, in the process of replacing all the extra places, I verified everything with the E2E node test. Should be good to go after the PR is merged.
Okay, cool. And the other remaining issue for 1.7 was finishing up the docs, and it looks like everybody got a docs PR in within time, so it looks like we're okay on that end. So moving forward to 1.8, if you open up the agenda doc, we have a section called the wish list, as well as the planning spreadsheet. The planning spreadsheet has been pre-populated with all the items that we were working on in 1.7 that we may not have completed yet, or they were alpha and we want to move them to beta, etc. In just a minute, Matt DeLeo is going to kick off talking about that and going through that. But if there's anything in that spreadsheet, not on that spreadsheet, that you think we should be working on for this quarter, please add it under the wish list section of the agenda. I'm going to paste the agenda doc into the chat window. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Matt. Matt is our SIG PM connection. He's going to lead the planning session for Q3. Matt, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let's see. So I don't think we need to go over the 1.7 end of release status unless people want to do that. It sounds like we've pre-populated the 1.8 list. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with the 1.8 spreadsheet, and we can get started. So what I was hoping to do is assign a priority and kind of a feature owner for each one of these bugs. Sorry, each one of these items. And I think a lot of them, they've been on here for a while, so we kind of know what they are. But maybe it would be good to just give a quick 10-second description for the people that know about them so that the rest of the community can understand. So getting started with this first one, we got this volume plugin metrics. We don't have an owner, but who knows about that and who can help us?
Yeah, I could give a quick summary of this. So last quarter, Hemant worked on a feature to add metrics to the cloud provider APIs for AWS and for Google Cloud. And this was basically instrumenting just the cloud API calls for attach, detach, create, delete, things like that. The ask here is, instead of, or in addition to instrumenting at that layer, let's instrument a layer back, which is the actual wrapper calls for the volume plugins themselves. And the logic here is that by doing so, we would be able to get instrumentation for all volume plugins instead of just the specific cloud metrics APIs. Does that make sense to folks?
Yep. What would we assign this? I think last time we had this as Not sure where the priority was. But yeah, what do we want to do for this one? I think this is a P1 or a P2.
I would put it at a 2 or a 3 even.
Yeah, okay. I'll give it a 2 for now. Do we know who can, Hemant, keep working on this, or?
Let's see. Hemant, is this something you'd be interested in working in, or would anybody else be interested in volunteering?
I can sorry.
For this issue?
Sorry, having trouble hearing you. Could you repeat that?
Is there any links for this feature?
Are there any links?
Links, yeah.
There are no feature links as of yet. Right now, it's just a description that I told you, but I'd be happy to create a feature issue for this, describing what needs to be done.
There was a feature request created by Warman, and it was closed, I think, but I'm happy to take ownership of this, and if somebody else can, like, I know who was speaking there, but if somebody else can work with me, that'll be great.
Okay. I'll put you in as the primary owner, and then whoever else wants to help out can add themselves to the sheet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had one quick question, and that's in terms of breaking out the cloud provider code. So obviously, I think it's targeted for 1.9 to have the cloud provider be totally deprecated. Is there any thought going into how these sorts of scraping activities are going to happen once the cloud provider is completely outside the auspices of the core?
Yeah, that's kind of one of the reasons we want to do this, is that we don't have to rely on that functionality anymore. If we instrument at the volume plugin layer, then we're going to get volume plugin related metrics regardless of whether it's implemented, it's a cloud plugin or some other volume plugin, and we can pretty much deprecate those. And then once they move out of tree, we don't really have to worry about them.
The purpose of the matrix, the cloud provider matrix, the API matrix were different though, Saad. The matrix was like we were running, we were overshooting the AWS API quotas, and we had no idea which call was we are making most. Like, for example, attach call makes so many API calls. It makes like 5 API calls, and a number of API calls are, it calls describe volume like, I don't know, 10 times. So the idea is like to have that instrumentation as well, like where we are like doing this. So right now it is these metrics, just to give you an update, they are not just available for AWS and GC. They have been added for OpenStack and vSphere as well. So as the part of the same effort. So we have
that's fair. I think to Jace's point, there's an effort underway to try to decouple the cloud metric, the cloud code from the generic Kubernetes code. And his question was around how these metrics would be surfaced once that code was decoupled. As far as volume plug earned, it would be this first line item. But to what Hemant was mentioning, having actual instrumentation for the cloud API calls, I think that remains to be seen once that implementation happens for decoupling.
Hi, this is Tushar from VMware. I have a question, and I missed some of the conversation, so maybe you guys covered it already. Excuse me if that's the case. So what I'm trying to figure out is, we also work with Hemant to basically add the support for vSphere, as he already mentioned. So we had a question that, why do every volume plugin or whatever cloud provider needs to do this? So why not do this in the core Kubernetes itself? And looks like, would that be addressed when the volume plugins move out of tree?
That's exactly what number 2 is trying to do, is to do the instrumentation at the volume plugin layer rather than an individual plugin or individual cloud provider level.
I see. So if I understand correctly, I don't know the timeline for when the volume plugins will move out of tree. So whenever that happens, at that point, the instrumentation will move from volume provider within the volume provider to outside volume provider, so that whenever the Kubernetes itself calls attach detach. Is that correct?
So with line item number 2, we want to move it out of the individual volume plugin to the generic layer where Kubernetes calls through to the volume plugin. So it's at the Kubernetes layer. Once the volume plugins move out of tree, and the way that I imagine that happening is a new volume plugin that's for CSI, it would still happen at the same layer. You wouldn't really need to do anything special in order to handle that.
Right. So if I understand correctly, this is dependent, whatever this prototype support for out of tree CSI volume plugins will happen it will take a while, right? For next,
Yes,
whatever.
let's save that discussion for that item.
Okay, yeah. So the question I have is then, because we are doing right now for vSphere cloud provider, we are doing some changes, and I'm just trying to figure out, we want to continue doing that because there is value that we see in for vSphere customers. So eventually this will move to the as part of CSI, we'll have a better architecture for that, right?
That's the plan.
Okay.
Yes.
More than the plan, that's the goal and the necessity. You are one of many, including Google, and including Red Hat, and including almost every member of the SIG. So, you are not alone, and this is why we're spending all this time and effort on CSI.
I agree, and we are actively engaging there. So yeah, I agree with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. So let's move on to the next line item, unless there's any more comments on that one. I think this one's just a bug fix for the Nfs wedging issue. It's been here for a while. I would say it's still a 2. I don't think it's a 1. I don't think anyone's getting bitten by it, but it's something we think we should probably try to do. So I'm going to go ahead and mark it as 2. It sounds like we have an owner. Thank you, Hemant. Can we move on to number 4, the prototype support for CSI?
Yeah. So as a lot of you are aware, last quarter we came up with a preliminary spec for what an out-of-tree volume plugin interface would look like, and we try to align that interface across multiple cloud orchestration systems, including Kubernetes, Mesos, Foundry, and Docker. We have a preliminary doc published for what that spec should look like, and now the plan is let's all go back and try to implement this preliminary draft of an interface and see what stumbling blocks we run into. And we can use that to revise the interface spec. So the item here is for Q3, a bunch of us would get together and try to tackle figure out what is the scope of work that is required to enable an out-of-tree volume plugin, whether that's going to be another volume plugin in Kubernetes, that's going to be a CSI volume plugin, how the packaging for these plugins is going to look like, how the deployment for these plugins is going to happen. And basically, I think the end goal here would be to come up with a design doc at the very minimum, and hopefully a prototype as well. The way that I see this playing out, based on our previous cadence, is that we would come up with a design doc / prototype in this quarter, and then for a subsequent release, we move to alpha, then beta, and then to stable. I spoke to Michael Rubin about this and a few other folks, and they rightfully pointed out that this, considering that our release cycle is about 3 months, that would put us 9 months to a year out. So I guess the real plan is let's figure out what the scope of this work is, and then we.
Your video or your audio is choppy. Maybe if you kill your camera, it'll leave some bandwidth.
How's this? Can you hear me better?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay. So I was saying, for this quarter, the plan is let's figure out what the scope of the work is and see if we can accelerate it, if at all possible. And if not, then we're looking at 9 months to a year. Michael, do you have any thoughts on this?
I worry about the 9 months to a year, and I want to know if there's anything we can do to accelerate that. Throughout Kubernetes overall, let's wait for the cadence of the minor release to ship as our kind of our blocker for getting things out the door. It really, it's frustrating for, I think, everybody. So I think that working maybe in release branch or prototyping something in that side is something we should consider. At the same time, since we've done so much examination of this API in the CSI and the CNCF space, I'm also curious if we can maybe accelerate the status of this work from like beta, just because A, we need to, and B, it's already gotten quite a lot of scrutiny. So it's something else to think about.
Hey guys, I think just hearing that, I think one thing to talk about is if we can accelerate the design doc around the packaging and interfacing with CSI from Kubernetes, that would help figure out, help us decide how far this is going to take. Because right now that's all outside the scope of CSI.
Yeah.
So the sooner we get to a design doc on how we interface with CSI and how we package and how we load up these providers and all that stuff, I think the clearer it'll be.
Yeah, I think packaging is going to be probably the biggest challenge going forward. Is anyone actually not just interested in the solution, but interested in contributing?
Yes, this is Tushar from VMware, and we are interested in contributing to the design and prototype.
So I think there's a CNCF meeting tomorrow about CSI. So maybe you can shift the discussion over there, because we, as a downstream project, don't really have a lot of influence on the upstream.
Actually, I think the packaging is really not quite as CNCF focused as it is a Kubernetes problem. I think the CSI API and being compatible is a big deal. And maybe we decide we want to host things, but I think how we package and how we distribute Kubernetes is a Kubernetes challenge and not a CNCF challenge as much. And I'm hoping that we keep it focused in Kubernetes.
Yep, I agree with that.
By its nature, it's external, right?
Yeah.
So I assume it's going to live like in the external storage repo, which isn't as tightly tied to the, the kube release process and timeline as.
At the end of the day, it's going to be the people in this group right now that are going to have to deal with supporting, executing, and really just sort of how we interact with the Kubernetes structure overall. This is not a problem that is also specific to just the storage side. So I think that's basically it. I think we were careful when we were discussing this in CNCF to leave the packaging question external to that, because it's going to be different for Docker or Mesos and Kubernetes. And the needs and the execution are probably going to be very specific. So we should probably, the CSI spec sort of left a lot of these doors open, and we should be focusing, I think, here on what we think is best for Kubernetes. Because what's best for Kubernetes may be very different than what's best for some of the other orchestrators using CSI.
Michael, one of the things I worry about is that how much the packaging influences CSI spec itself. So that's why I would front load the packaging design, because it might have a bearing on the CSI spec itself.
So when I'm sorry, who said that? I can't tell from the.
It's Bassam from the RIP team.
We thought about this a lot in the CSI spec. And at this point, we don't think it's going to have a lot of that effect. If it does, then let's burn that bridge when we get to it. But let's get started here first.
Okay.
Hey, Michael. So I'll let you guys decide, whether it should discuss in CNCF or SIG storage or wherever, right? So let us know how we can contribute. Right now, it is unclear to me.
Yeah. So I'm going to create a Kubernetes CSI work group, and I'll send it out to an invitation to the Storage SIG mailing list, and whoever wants to contribute can contribute, and we can hold regular Kubernetes CSI meetings and figure out the implementation, who wants to work on what, and divide up work and all that.
I mean, what really worries me, to be just very open, is that CNCF is a little more pay to play than the Kubernetes SIG, and I want to make sure that we are able to make sure that the packaging question is representative for everybody in the open community, and is really also very user focused too.
All right. Any other questions? If not, let's keep it moving.
Okay. So next up, we have local ephemeral storage support, and this is capacity isolation resource management. Does anyone want to give like literally a 10-second blurb on this one?
Michelle, would you want to?
Sure. Basically, the idea with this one is we don't want a single pod to cause the whole node to be unusable due to running out of disk space. So we want to be able to specify capacity limits on pods and containers.
Great. That's a great summary. I think this is very important for the local storage support. Would you call this a 1 or a 2 in your mind?
I would call it a 1.
1. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
So this feature has gone into alpha in 1.7 or soon to be. So it's going to be moving to beta.
Beta. Okay. And who's going to be working on that? Who wants to work on that, rather?
So Jing drove this to alpha. I think it would probably be a good idea to have her drive to beta as well.
Okay. Okay. Great. Anything else
Does it have
for
a
that one?
shepherd, or should we need to make sure that we have shepherds for these things too?
Yeah, I think
what we could do is have assignees this week, and then the next meeting we can assign reviewers.
Okay,
yeah. And people can
yeah.
sign up during the week. Yeah, or 2 weeks.
Hi, this is Derek from China. I've talked to Jin during the Linux Camp in China, and we agreed to work on it together. And I can put myself on a reviewer, so it's there and then just below this line. Yeah,
That's great.
Okay.
the same person. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
No problem.
Local persistent storage. So I think this one is pretty self-evident from the description, but it adds support for persistent storage on locally attached disks. I think this is going to be a P1. It sounds like you already have owners. It's probably populated from last time, but I think it's probably the same people should keep it moving forward.
Yeah, basically we have our alpha in 1.7, but the big piece that's missing is the scheduler and persistent volume binding integration. So that is going to be the big focus for this release.
Okay, and that'll bring it to beta, right, when we have that?
I hope so. I'm not super confident that I can make the scheduler changes and the API changes to move it to beta in the same release.
Okay. Okay. Maybe I'll mark it as an X and we'll try to bring it in if we can.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, testing is always something that's always going to be here. I think it's always a P1. Yeah, I'm not sure that has like a target status, but do we have people that, I know that we've had a lot of people work on this in the past. Do we want to have the same people, or who wants to sign up to do this?
So in the past, this has been driven by Aaron, Jeff, and John. Are you guys still interested in driving this?
The testing, yeah. And in addition to that, we had a conversation, which I brought up on the last SIG call, about leveraging, through the CNCF to get an environment where we can test all of the plugins. It came up on a call I just had with Jeff an hour ago that a lot of the plugins aren't being tested through the CI right now. And so there's some pretty serious repercussions of that. So we need to keep driving the testing to be able to not only include that, but to provide an environment where we can test those. So yeah, we'll keep leading that. And sorry, did someone want to say something?
Yeah, have you been able to engage with Clint yet on resources for this area?
No, that's on my list today to do,
Okay.
Michael. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, I've been out on PTO, but I have it on my list today because it needs to happen sooner than later.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, Clint's on vacation this week, but he should be available.
I think if we came up with a defined plan that he could execute on, that would probably be really helpful to him right now. So it really feels like, he's got a whole bunch of resources and is just trying to figure out how to best contribute and patch them into our effort.
So I kind of already put that together, Michael.
Oh, wonderful.
In that we agreed, we would need to have vendor representation for each one of these plugins. We can't just have people contribute test cases and then go away. We need to have some sort of governance in terms of what we test and who represents those. So that has to get flushed out from each one of the areas in which we're contributing plugins. So we got to figure out that ownership, but I will send to him the notes I made from our E2E meeting, and I think that's a good start.
All right, and please, if you haven't sent it out to this whole storage SIG, please do, just to make sure that, everyone gets to see the goodness.
Yep, I did a couple weeks ago. It's a
I saw that. I did actually see it. I didn't know if there were updates, that's all.
Okay, nope, we'll meet again tomorrow. There'll be updates after that meeting as well.
All right, snapshots is another area that's gotten a lot of attention recently. I think I'll leave this as a P1 and
I'm not sure about the P1.
okay.
And I know this is going to be something that is a little controversial. And so I was curious what people said. I'm kind of doing this a little bit to get attention to it. I talked to Brad. Brad, you're online, right?
Yes, and I can kind of give a status on this. We're straddling 1718 with it. It's pretty much fully external, and I know there's some concerns about it not being integrated with, the core cube constructs and where those touch points are. So I don't think it's necessarily a priority for the release, but it's something that we want to have a prototype sooner than later. And then maybe as part of 1.8, we figure out where the touch points are with, like stateful sets or something else.
I really worry that we're going ahead a little fast at this point without knowing enough use cases and integration with, like you said, stateful sets and some of the other like SIGs that are actually using storage and understand state and the need of this in Kubernetes. So I feel like Brad and I, we've talked about this once, just when we were talking about something else. I want to make sure that we don't end up, I know there are some other parts of Kubernetes of late where we wrote a lot of code and we did a lot of investment. And then as we got closer to beta, we said, oh, pucker nuts. It really, we have some neat tech and we've sort of made some of the vendors happy, but for the users, it may not actually be as a great an experience as we expected.
Sorry. I just want to make a statement. Do we have like certain criteria we should pass the milestones and then we become the stabilized version in tree and needs to go out to the P1 feature?
So I think for me, like the difference between P1 and P2 is that if we look at the release in 1.7 and we say, oh, look, the P1s are in danger, we say, guess what? We need to take people off P2s and start focusing on P1s. And the difference between P2s and P3s are sort of nice to have. And, we should start thinking about it and put some attention to it. But as a SIG, we don't see it as a high priority. The reason I'm looking at this as a possible P2 is if we were looking like, because we don't yet have in my mind, by the way, this is an opinion and not an authoritative position. And this is why I'm bringing it up now. And maybe we should table this for after we've gone through the sheet. Because it feels like Snapshots is valuable technology that we still have not fully shaped into a solid solution and how we're going to integrate it with the other pieces of Kubernetes. I'm loath to put it in the P1 priority because, we have other items that we know we want to get in 1.7 and we know exactly how they're going to be shaped and integrate with the rest of Kubernetes.
So I think we can break this up into two pieces, right? Like we identified like what the common constructs were for snapshots for like the most basic functional usage of snapshots. And that's kind of what we're delivering for like 1.7. And the idea maybe being that we could incubate that and make sure that we got like just the most core basic pieces right before we moved on to like a second phase where it's the advanced features. And some of the reason behind that is there's just so much explosion around, use cases and features and what it could do or what people thought it should do. We want to make sure like the smallest piece that we could implement was right.
The minimum viable product.
Yeah.
Well,
I still don't know what that is though. And that's the problem. Like when I ask people, I don't quite see convergence.
So something else I want to add, sorry to interrupt you, Michael. Go ahead.
And when I talk to the workloads people, the other reason is I'm getting feedback from workloads folks in the app SIG, I believe. And they keep saying, well, this snapshot thing is cute, but most applications have a way of dealing with this on their own. And if you try to apply snapshots, keeping the state of applications consistent, before and after an upgrade, you're going to get it wrong. And so then I presented the reasons why I think this is valuable and the scenarios where it is. And it's kind of like all right, maybe good luck with that. And I guess I kind of want to know more convincingly, what is the minimum viable product? And what is the actual, how are people going to use this? How are customers, what problem are they really going to solve when they start using these snapshots that is solvable by applications right now?
All right, so can we get, for example, the SIG app to contribute the use cases? Because that would be helpful.
Well, if we did that, I think the answer is they'd have none. That's the feedback I'm getting right now.
Okay, so they're not interested in snapshots.
That's the feedback I got from the informal conversations I've had with them, which is, why I'm kind of bringing this up in the first place. So if they don't have those use cases, where are they coming from? And I want to make sure that it's not just, hey, we can do snapshots and they're cool. I understand why at the infrastructure layer it's really cool.
Exactly.
I want to, and by the way, I believe that we need to do this in Kubernetes, but I want to make sure that we have a real tight, compelling case for doing it in Kubernetes to guide the development.
So one thing I'd like to add is we need to start thinking about the quote unquote, the Kubernetes way of doing things instead of thinking about storage features and saying, okay, there's a storage feature. It doesn't exist in the Kubernetes API. Let's expose it. Let's take a step back and let's think about how are Kubernetes users going to use this for things like deployments, for things like stateful sets, and how is it going to benefit them? If they are using it for taking snapshots of their sharded database, what is the actual user workflow going to look like? And instead of designing from the bottom up and hoping that we converge to a solution that'll make sense to our end users, let's start from the top. Let's consider the use cases from our users' perspective and then design down from that. And I realized that a lot of people in the SIG, even I thought near the end of the last quarter that snapshots was the design that we were converging on, we were happy with. But then I think I also started realizing that what we came up with was essentially taking the existing the paradigms that storage systems expose around snapshots and exposing it directly through the Kubernetes API and not really considering, is that really the best that Kubernetes can do to expose this kind of functionality? So
I think that direction was
let's
intentional,
do it
though.
in reverse.
Yeah, I actually think that we took that direction intentionally because we were overwhelmed with some of the top level use cases to a point that we couldn't get the building blocks right. And so we tabled some of that stuff as phase 2 work so we could get the core pieces in and then move on to like the second phase.
And now, Brad, I'm getting nervous a little because there's some other parts of Kubernetes that have done that, and then they had to undo work as they realized that the goals were too fuzzy and they built building blocks that had to be reshaped.
Well, I think that's fair, but it's also an alpha release of it, right? I mean, we're in the most flexible.
We need to be careful about alpha, right? We can't use the alpha designation as just let's do it and then hopefully.
No. I think Brad may be okay. I think but what you're hearing from me is more of, this is why I think it should be a 2, which is why if we have these other items this quarter coming up that we get around to that point where things are tight and we need to know what we invest in, and we need to make sure what makes it for 1.8. If it's snapshot sounds like it's still too early to put in the 1 category. And also I think that I'm trying to also really raise the flare that says, let's make this next quarter the one where we actually do that work of figuring out what those use cases are, and that Kubernetes use is Saad, I think, eloquently described.
Yeah. So I actually think we're all on the same page. Like we're trying to get we're still finishing up our 1.7, straddling 1.8 with the basics on snapshots. I think that the phase 2 priorities for 1.8 are definitely a 2, and we should start gathering information and doing design talks for it, but implementation's off the table. We want to let it incubate for a while and make sure the core constructs are correct.
We should talk about getting the kids.
I have some feedback from VMware team regarding this. So maybe we are missing something, but we are finding it hard to contribute to especially volume snapshot support, because I see that there are no meetings happening for, I guess, 2 to 3 weeks, and I may be completely wrong. So correct me if I'm wrong, but so that is what we see. So what we are doing is we are basically following the document, and then we give feedback, and then we get a feedback that, oh, this comment does not make any sense because the document has changed. So basically, we are running behind, a moving target. So what we actually, our team reached out to, I'm not sure, to Jing or I don't know who, that, is there some forum, meeting or whatever, right? It doesn't have to be a formal meeting, but where we can actually see that this is a version of the spec and now give your feedback. Because now if I understand the discussions that you, Brad, and you guys are having is that, how to do this with app SIG or whatever. Here, the basic Kubernetes, we are finding it hard to even contribute to the basic volume snapshot support in Kubernetes.
So we had a spreadsheet. So the communication has been on the SIG mailing list. We did meetings for a while while the design was being nailed down, and it got to a point that, we considered it complete for the first phase, and we had a spreadsheet with like tasks for each item, and then also I know groups were meeting on the Slack channel to discuss development, which was happening in a forked repo. It's still going on there, and we kind of paused like design discussions while the development for that first phase closed out. So
yeah. So I guess this is Brad. Yeah, we are late to the party. I acknowledge that. So what I'm saying is that, if the design discussions have been finalized, then I would assume that the doc hasn't changed. Will not change as much, right? But it seems to be changing. So so that is why my question was. And other thing is that just to give credit to the Kubernetes team, right? So we did have some feedback and it did get addressed. Just that I want to make sure my team's time is being spent on, looking at the finalized doc. If it is changing, we'll wait and then we'll give our feedback.
Yeah, I think that's good feedback, and we should take action items here and see if we could communicate better. Our community continues to grow larger and larger. I think we have over 45 participants in the SIG right now, and making sure everybody's getting all the information they need is important. How about for every one of these features, keeping a running agenda kind of doc like we have for the primary meeting doc, where every time there's a meeting, summarize what was discussed and a link to the most updated version of the spec. And so if anybody who wasn't able to attend the meeting would be able to look at that doc and then link that doc from the agenda doc. Is that something everyone can commit to? Would that help?
So Saad, I have one feedback on this, right? So just to clarify my request, right? What I'm saying is that I'm not requesting that, start the meetings or because we are late, explain us everything again. That's not what I'm saying, right? What I'm suggesting is that there are few set of people who are working on this feature, who are more knowledgeable, they have the background, they're doing the right job, right? No question about that. Right now, the doc that they're working on is the one that we see, right? And that doc is changing. So the simple thing could be that, if the doc is still changing, maybe we can have two separate things, and so that we look at the stable version, and you compile the changes that you have done during the week, and then we look at the next version. Because if the doc is changing on a daily basis, it's just not sustainable for us.
So I think there's two phases to design, right? One, when you're just starting off and everything is very fresh and you kind of want to move very quickly. And at that point, I think it makes sense to have something like a Google Doc where everyone can collaborate very quickly. But I think that gets to a point where it becomes unsustainable, like you guys are pointing out. And I think that's the point at which we should check the doc into a fixed place in the repository, the proposals directory, and then use that as a pivot point for working together. That way everybody has a stable set to work on. Would that help at all, or?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And we are open to suggestions. I'm not preferring one over the other.
So not to, we should definitely do that. And, I know that the doc has changed because we went from, we went to custom resource definitions away from third-party resources. And that's some of the flux that's in the design document now. Maybe we could say that any issue owner or any feature owner on this sheet, you could email them directly and ask for status or how to get plugged into this. I mean, I'm open for that. If there's features that we're responsible for, I don't mind people reaching out directly and asking where we're at on them or how to get involved.
No, Brad, we are doing that already. So we are past that stage. We are already actively working with, I believe, Jing. My team will know who they're working with. But I'm saying that this is a symptom of a generic problem, not specific to volume snapshot alone. That's all.
Okay, so let's take that as a note and let's keep moving on. I think it's worth discussing and worth taking action items on, but we got to get through this entire doc today. We've got 15 minutes left.
Yeah, so next up is resizing volume support.
Yeah, so I've opened a proposal request, design proposal, and it's in GitHub. Tim has raised some points about open coding the resize commands that plugin will execute. So that is something that the proposal needs to take into account, and some other details has to be flexed out. It can be two, no problem, but I think if there's, so if there's no major objections, I intend to get this done for 1.7.
And that would be an alpha or in 1.7 or something more than that?
Alpha.
Alpha, okay, great.
Can we prioritize this as one?
Please also make sure that this one gets Tim Hawken view. And if you need help getting his attention, I can help with that. I think he's mentioned that it sort of it changes some fundamental assumptions in how we look at resources and objects. And it also may touch upon node SIG or resource management. So it seems like a small thing from storage, but it may have ripples that we need to consider.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We stepped on that time bomb, that landmine at the 1.7 release.
Yeah.
We were shooting to get this done early for 1.8 and interlock with Tim and make sure that he's okay with where we're going on this. So it is a high priority to us.
Why is it such a high priority? What is the use case and the business need?
We've had customers ask to resize storage, and I mean that's.
For example, like
like
users who are running like a workload on Gluster or something, they can resize for example, something like Gluster doesn't even require file system resize, so they want to be able to use a bigger Gluster volume, and they can just do that using one command actually. But if the volume is managed by Kubernetes, it becomes, and the end user doesn't have access to that command, then it becomes harder. Similarly, similar thing for someone running, I think we have had 2-3 RFE requests for, I don't know what the full word is, but where the customers were wanting to expand their disk that they were running the application on actually.
So this has CSI implications then, correct?
We might need to add resize calls into the CSI. I don't think I saw the proposal. It didn't have any resize API calls in that, so we might have to add.
Yeah, I don't think might. I think it has to, right?
Yeah, well, it's not in there now, but I think that might be considered as a roadmap where the discussion of that CSI kickoff said that my impression of what I heard was that they were shooting for a minimum viable product scenario.
Right. And my point is just that this is not something that what I think what is useful is to think that this would probably not go to stable until we figure out that it's in CSI also. Do you understand?
Yeah, we're wanting to incubate it somewhat.
Yeah.
And then add it to the CSI spec, right? And we wouldn't ever make it to beta until we were confident that it was stable, and at that point it would be stable enough to put the CSI spec.
And a little more background on use case, Mike. I think the real circumstance where people want or need this is that some storage providers allow thin provisioning, some don't, and most users would like to have some pay-as-you-grow scenario where
I get the use case. I apologize for cutting you off. I just know that we have so many more to do. There's a more general comment. I'm going to send an email to SIG Storage in general just about the difference of, I don't feel like I've got a good understanding of when a Kubernetes storage administrator boundary is versus the infrastructure storage administrator. And I think it would help us a lot in a lot of these items. It's hard to get that line right.
And the other feedback that we had earlier for snapshots, I think applies to this as well, where we should look at features, not just, hey, there exists a feature in storage, let's expose it through Kubernetes. Let's look at it from the top down and see how exactly would a Kubernetes user benefit from this? How would the workflow look like? How does it fit into the existing paradigms? Well, I know that's difficult to do. It's hard for me to do, but I think it'll be worthwhile for our users.
Yeah, I think the use case is kind of more clear here, at least from my end. I think what stinks is that we've got state in two places. you've got state inside the infrastructure that says how big the volume is, and then we also have state inside of the objects that live in etcd. And it's sort of, where is the centralized control, and how are we going to administer it? And that makes it hard.
Yeah, I think this feature doesn't interact with a bigger system like stateful set and whatnot, like to. So I have, but I agree with Mike that, we need to, there's a state, like, that's why we have on PVC two field, the status dot size and spec dot size, because these two states represent like what user expects and what's the size of the device. So there's like, we have the controller to basically sync them up and make sure that they are same or they're in sync. But
if there's confusion on this feature, let's hold a cabal next week and talk about it. I don't want to drag the planning down.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, let's move on to the next item.
Okay. I think the next one's somewhat related. It's the dynamic update of the PV and PVC. So I think this one is kind of needed for the resizing of the volume support. Is there anything else we want to do on this one? Do we want to mark it as a 2 then, and then maybe revisit it when we visit?
Related.
Yeah. Okay. I'll leave it as a 2 for now. We can come back to that one. Data replication. This one's also very, I think, new and needs to be scoped a bit more. But who wants to kind of talk about that one and maybe?
So we talked about replicating data possibly against or between zones or across cloud providers.
Mm-hmm.
It's been somewhat of an exploration into use cases. And I know there's a few people that have taken stabs at it different times. Last was Serge leading this effort, but I haven't seen him on the storage SIG. So maybe put me down as the leader on this and I'll take it from there. But I don't think it's.
Honestly, I think I don't see a lot of activity going on with all the other things in 1.8. And Brad, also, the more and more I'm working with Federation SIG, the less and less I think this is something urgent for tackling even this year.
Sure, that's fair. So we can just keep a low priority on it then, right?
I actually, we could even almost take it off the list for now.
Okay.
I mean, it's up to what other people think, but like, I don't really see us doing anything with this for a while.
Well, would that be possible? We just keep it a low priority, just in case people are interested. We know it is being tracked, and there's a place we can talk about.
Sure,
that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, anyone should always be able to talk about anything, anytime, and have more conversations on the list.
Yeah, I think until we have a feature repo for it, it's very hard to talk about it.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we got 9 minutes. Let's drive through this as fast as we can. Next item, PVC capacity usage stats. This is an attempt at improving the user experience around the PVC object. It currently tells us what the capacity is that the user requested. The PV object tells you what the capacity of the actual object is. We don't really have any mechanism to tell the end user how much of that capacity is being used. This is a low priority. I'd say 2 or 3 is okay with me. I think Jing is the one who suggested this feature. I'm not sure if she's still interested in driving it or not. This might be a feature we can leave until next time to find an owner for, since it's relatively low priority.
Okay. Block volume support.
Block volume support is something that we started realizing that we really need, especially now with local storage. But the CSI spec is also exposing block volume support. So things like EBS volumes and GCPD volumes, we want to give users the ability to consume them through a file system or directly as a block device. And so I think this, I would rank this pretty high, either a 1 or a 2. Aaron already has started the design on this. What do other people think as a 1 or a 2? Any
1's fine. I think we're targeting it for 1.8.
Yep. That's correct.
In alpha and 1.8? Or something more?
Alpha sounds right to me.
Alpha sounds right.
Okay. Okay, great. And it sounds like we already have owners. That's good. Let's see. Moving on to the next one. We've got exposing storage class parameters to end users. So
So this is the storage class today. Parameters are all set by the cluster administrator. For power users, we'd really like to give the cluster administrator the ability to expose some of these parameters to the end user and let them select maybe things like zone or some other parameter. Jan had a proposal on this last quarter. We didn't really get to it. I think it's worth doing. It'll be value add for our end users. It might make things like controlling zone easier. It sounds right to me, and I believe Jan is the correct owner for this.
Yep.
Is this going to be, when it comes out, an alpha, GA?
This would be, I think we should target alpha or beta. It doesn't exist, so if we're going to follow the cadence, it should be alpha.
Okay.
Hopefully, yeah.
We'll do alpha for now. I think we should try to see if we can, if we think it's a low risk type thing, maybe we should try to move it to beta right away.
Sure.
Yeah. Enable containerization of mount dependencies.
This was also another proposal that Jan had out. Didn't get a lot of traction last quarter. We need this for CSI, so I think I would rank this as high as CSI.
Okay.
So, yeah.
We fell apart in the Node SIG, quite honestly. Node balked at the changes, but we were trying really hard to land this in 1.7, and we were very close to.
Okay.
So alpha.
Alpha. Okay. Looks like we're good there. Improved chroot hack.
I would assign this to Jing again. I believe she may have already completed the work here. I'm not sure whether there's any additional work required or not, but we can sync up with Jing and figure out what's necessary. For everyone else, this is a hack that exists today to allow mount dependencies to be injected into the file system of the root file system. And right now it's very constrained. The idea here would be to make it a little bit more extensible, but ideally it should be replaced by number 15 soon.
Yeah, for the record, we should really be talking to Jing to make sure she can actually do all of this work. We've thrown a lot on her shoulder. So that may shift around a bit. We may ask for some help.
We can review these again next meeting.
So fix the volume, broken volume reconstruction. So I know this is very cool, very needed fix.
Got punted from last quarter. I want to rank this very highly because I think it's a very important recovery scenario that we're not handling very well. That said, I don't like going back to Michael's, the difference between a 1 and a 2. If it falls through, are we going to pull people off of it? I don't think so. I think it's a 2 is valid, even though I think I want to rank it higher. And Chokri is the person working on this.
Okay. The Azure DD refactor.
Jace, do you have any updates here? Maybe an assignee?
Yeah, so I'm happy to be the assignee, and Huamin has been extremely helpful getting this done. We've got people working on it. We're getting comments and feedback and just working it through.
Okay, great. This be like maybe a 2 or a 1?
It's for us, it's a 1 for sure.
Okay. And it's a bug fix. Okay, all right. Host path volume type.
So this is a proposal and a PR that's already out. It's considering extending the host path volume plugin API to allow mentioning the type of host path, whether that's a file, a directory, a socket. And the idea here is right now the failure scenario for host path is that, for example, if you try to mount a directory that doesn't exist, it'll automatically get created, and that may not be what users intend. I think it's nice to have. I would call it a 2 or a 3. I forget who the author is.
Hasn't this feature kind of been sterilized with the local storage or the local PV work? I mean, it kind of seems like a subset of that.
I think this is an improvement on the existing host path volume plugin. Sure, I think a lot of the people that were using host path are probably going to move over to local storage, but the PR exists. There's people working on it. I think Tim's already reviewed it. I have no objection for it going in, and I don't really feel strongly towards it not being going in either. So.
Okay, I didn't know it was so far along. Okay.
So mount options to GA.
We haven't really had any complaints about the feature so far. It seems like it's been well received. I don't see any complaints going to GA.
Okay. priority is tricky for this one. Obviously, we want it to happen. It sounds like it might not be that much work, so maybe
Yeah.
it would be a P1 to
And
just.
if it doesn't happen, we don't really care, so I would be okay with it.
Maybe a 2. Okay. All right. We don't have that one. Let's see. 22. We've got, so now 21. So persistent volume, source API, refactoring for iSCSI.
Who added this item?
Oh yeah, I just created my. It's actually the follow-up of the discussions. Saad and Jordan the kids had on the reviews of StorageOS. So what happens currently that the volume source and the persistent volume source are mirror image in the API objects. They don't have to be in that case, and there's issues of that. So we should refactor these API objects, so they will refer resources out of their namespace in the persistent volume source.
So we have to be careful here. So the context here is that the way that we've been adding secrets that are required by either provisioning or attaching or mounting has been kind of haphazard, and we haven't really gotten the security team involved. And when the StorageOS plugin was going in, luckily Jordan Liggett took a look at it from the security point of view, and he's like, hang on, we need to pump the brakes on how secrets are being passed around here. And the solution that we ended up going with was that we made the persistent volume source object different from the volume source object because cluster administrators who create the PV object have more privileges than somebody who references it directly from a pod, a pre-provisioned volume. We are happy with the way that it landed for StorageOS. I believe Ramin added this to kind of revisit this for the other volume plugins. But the problem with the other volume plugins is the API is kind of fixed. You can't go in and arbitrarily change it. But I do agree it's worth taking a look at and seeing things we could do to improve this. Did somebody want to have a comment on that? So yeah, I would call this a 2 or a 3, or maybe a 2. Is somebody trying to comment?
I think Tushar, but I think he's having some problems with the audio.
Okay, maybe we can come back to that if there's any more comments. So I'd say P2, worth taking a look at. I'm not sure how much work, what we can actually still do here, but worth taking a look at.
Okay. Do we have an owner or?
Yeah, kind of the first owner, and anybody is welcome to join.
Okay. Okay. And then finally we have last 2. I guess we're a little over. So support attached patch for read-write only volumes such as iSCSI, or read-write once iSCSI fiber channel RBD.
Yeah, so this I added this one as well. So we have issues on the field that people mounted the volume on 2 different nodes, RWO volumes on 2 different nodes, and there's no way we can stop them. The end of the discussion is that we should implement attach and detach for these read-write only volumes, so to have access control.
Okay.
What would the attach detach do?
Essentially, just logically detach and attach, but that's the access control for the nodes. So if there's a second node to attach the same volume, it's going to get stopped up there. But because we have
I was under the impression that for some of these, for example, iSCSI, the attach could only happen locally, that there wasn't a control plane that you could hit to do the attach.
No, so that's why we need the attach and detach as controller. The controller itself does nothing on the host or on the targets, but it does the access control based on its own understanding of what the state should be.
Okay, I'd like to just take a look at the
yeah, once we have the first part of the PR, then you can take a look and see if anything makes sense.
Okay, what priority would you assign this?
I would like to have a P1 or P2.
It's a bug. It kind of reads like a feature, but it's led to a couple pretty nasty bugs.
It's a pretty.
Okay.
Causes some big problems.
Okay, so maybe
we can take a 2 first, and if that really makes sense, escalate it to 1 is not too late.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. I'll put a question mark, but it sounds like we'll be able to figure that out pretty quickly. So we have a new volume plugin, Rook volume plugin. Sounds like we have ownership of it.
Yeah, so this feature, this was a new volume plugin that was hoping to get in 1.7. They missed the deadline for it, and I don't have any problems with it going into 1.8. They already have a PR out that is under review. There's some questions about what the design for the PR should look like. It's a little bit different than some of the other volume plugins. And that's it.
Great. I'll put it as a 2. If anybody disagrees, we can change it to a 1.
Yeah, we're definitely working on it actively, and we need some attention from. There's a design question on it, so we haven't been able to schedule anything yet with the right people.
Okay. Great. Well, thanks everyone. I think we have to make another pass to sign reviewers, but I think if everyone can take the time to actually look through this list, and if you want to be a reviewer, please do so and add yourself to the list. And we will go through quickly again next time. Hopefully it won't take too much time to go through and make sure everything's looking the way we want it to. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll turn it back over to you, Saad.
All right, thanks, Matt. So the remaining items on the agenda, I'm just going to carry them over to our next meeting. Sorry for folks who were hoping for further discussions, and thank you for attending today.
Thanks.
Take care.
You too.
Thanks.